Welcome into the Kings Beat podcast. I am James Ham, Kings Insider for ESPN 1320 and the Kings Beat. We are brought to you by Prize Picks. We are also a Blue Wire podcast, so thanks for joining us here. Joining me tonight is Fox 40, Sean Cunningham. Sean, how are you?
I'm good. You gave it away. We're doing it. We're doing it at nighttime. It's
Yeah,
uh, it's a little different, but it's a. I'm here away from my little cozy candle lit studio that I like to have at my residence, my domicile, if you will.
yeah.
And I'm here at the sports office at Fox 40, so doing a little double duty. But happy to be with you. Hope everyone had a Merry Christmas. The holidays seem like a month long event, but a lot of family, a lot of friends, a lot of drinking and eating. I mean, it's just killing each other, but it's been a lot of fun for sure.
It's been a lot of basketball, Sean.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean,
I
I
like
think that I do too, but like the home games upon home games is a little crazy. I mean, we've had a lot. We've been at Golden One Center a ton. I am
Oh
sitting
man,
here. No, I mean that's okay. That's
I
okay.
know, I know.
Um, it's just when you're like this week we did double duty. So me and Kyle on ESPN 1320 we had both. Well, we did our standard 10 to 2, but then I mean standard 10 to 12, but we also picked up 12 to noon. I'm at 12 to 2 with Damian and Kenny out. 4 hours on the radio is tough, man. I know it doesn't seem like it's that bad, but for someone who has problems sitting, 4 hours, you get up and like you don't walk right the rest of the day. And then by 3 days of it, like you're shot. So today was a recovery day. And it's been a tough week to fit in a pod because the
Yeah.
Kings have played on Wednesday and Friday after the show, and it's just like really tight windows and all that stuff. So a little difficult. We don't have Brendan today. He's away on the weekend for the weekend. So good for him. He's actually taking a breather, which is nice to hear. He works really hard, and we're glad to see that he can take a weekend off here and there. Sean, we got a lot to talk about. Before we get to that, let's just do the business side. If you're watching here on YouTube, hop in down below and give us a thumbs up if you don't mind. Subscribe to the channel. Go to thekingsbeat.com, become a premium subscriber to the Kings Beat so you get access to everything that we do here at the Kings Beat. And then let's hit our price picks stuff. Like I've been playing price picks all season. Well, I finished last season playing price picks too. And I've had a great time. I did actually, I had a good night last night. I think
Oh,
yeah, I think I hit 4 out of 6, but one of those was because Kevin Huerter got injured. So probably 4 out of 5. So I actually did okay. And the one that I missed on, realistically, I probably shouldn't have missed on Bogdanovich, just kept missing 3-point shots late in the game and he finished with like 21 points, rebounds, assists combined. And I needed 23 and a half. So I needed 24. But yeah, I've been having a good time with it. It's really fun. We have a good time with the media guys, all of us playing. And right now is cool because they're doing a lot of promos, especially on Fridays, where you can get free plays. If you go on and I think if you put in the password KingsBeat, all one word, they'll match up to $100 on your first buy-in to play. And so lots of cool things, especially with the NFL season upon us and the playoffs upon us. Like this weekend, there's so many different options. And I think the last couple of games I've noticed too, there's a big expansion of Sacramento Kings choices. So I was able to had this weird play that I did on Friday night where um, I had to choose more or less of Keegan Murray with point 0.5 dunks. Like, oh, that's easy. So he had a dunk in the first quarter and took care of that one. So there are all kinds of like little things like that where you can play and have a good time. So again, there's a link down below in the bio, in the description if you want to jump on board with the prize picks. And again, I believe the password is KingsBeat, KINGSBEAT, all one word,
sounds
and
like
that
a
will
good one.
get you. Yeah, that will get you matching for your first buy-in on price picks. So Let's get to the show, Sean. We got a lot to talk about. The two big topics, of course, is going to be the last two games that the Kings have played, but we also will have to hit on this OG Anunoby trade that just happened on Saturday. Reportedly happened between the Toronto Raptors and the New York Knicks. I think a lot of Kings fans are going to be like, "Why not us?" And I think we've got a pretty good explanation as to why that didn't happen for the Sacramento Kings. But Sean, let's start with Wednesday. The Kings faced the Trailblazers, the first of a 3-game road trip. It's one of the most bizarre road trips I've ever seen in all my time covering the league, where Kings play in the Pacific, the Eastern, the Central time zone, and then back to the Pacific time zone over a 4-day stretch, a 4-game stretch. But have you seen something like that where, you go Portland to Atlanta to Memphis and then back home? I mean, it just seems
Yeah.
like a really
No.
strange road trip.
There's years where they've gone from like Minnesota to Miami. So
They're the
you don't.
7. Yeah,
Yeah.
they've got a
It's
bad one in January. That's crazy.
talk
Yeah.
about. I mean, the tough part of packing for a trip like that. Typically you're in winter months, and a lot of these cities have cold ice and snow and elements, and you're packing for such things. But when you go to the likes of Minnesota and Miami in a certain trip, that's a little bit different. But I mean, no, there's look, travel is what it is. I don't think it's all. I think that they have the benefit that it spans a whole week. I mean, you think about
Mhm.
it, like, yeah, you're in Portland. It's close to home. You're able to enjoy Christmas for the most part, and then you're right out on the road the next day, and having to play. And it looked like there was a Christmas hangover, maybe a little too much holiday cheer or whatever it was, and they didn't look good at all in that game, frankly.
Yeah, they laid an egg.
Yeah,
Yeah, and I think we're not going to dive too deep into the Portland loss because it's a few days ago now, but 130 to 113, it continued the trend of the Kings getting blown out in their losses. And, they lost by 12 to Minnesota. I thought that game was okay. It's the second night of a back-to-back. I thought they hung and they just really didn't have enough juice to get it done. But then they get to that Portland game, and again, we have a 17-point loss. So I think we're up to 9 of the Kings' 12 losses are double-digit losses.
yeah.
And, the team's defensive rating is, I'm sure it improved after the Atlanta game, but it had to improve because it couldn't get much worse. It just keeps going down. I think they were down around number 22 last time I looked. Was there anything that you took away from the loss in Portland other
Yeah,
than they just came out flat?
yeah. It made Duop Reef into a into a household name in the annals of Kings history. There's always like these career games. I mean, it's kind of like a drinking game at this point. When especially when the team was bad over the past 16 seasons before last year, and you're talking about guys having career games at the Kings' expense. And Duop Reef, man, 25 points. I think most Kings fans probably had no idea who the hell he was. And then you add Jabari Walker to that as well, another 17-point game. And those guys, really destroyed him. I felt on the boards. I mean, I think it was only like a 6-board disadvantage, but it just felt like Portland was just making every hustle play possible. Portland's bench really was impressive in that. And it's just, typical thing that we talk about when the Kings lose. It's they get hit in the mouth. They have a hard time responding to length and physicality. And for whatever reason, they don't keep their foot on the gas. There's things have been slowed down at times, and the pace isn't there. And it's really a live and die by the three type of team. And I know we're going to talk about, getting your head kicked in with a lot of these, big deficits that we've seen this season so far. And I think last podcast, I didn't really think too much of it. It's certainly become more and more of a theme this season. And I think the, for fast forwarding a bit to what happened in Atlanta the other night, I think they came into that game and Mike Brown was ready to make a few changes, a few little tinkers and tweaks, and I think they were necessary.
Yeah, I want to finish up with the Portland game because I think
Hmm.
the Portland game starts a trend, right? So we're seeing a trend that's developing with Sacramento Kings, which is not a good trend at all. It's that De'Aaron Fox and Domantas Sabonis are absolutely kicking ass and destroying teams. I mean, in that game, Fox had 43 points. He had 8 rebounds. He had 4 assists. He was really good. He had 5 turnovers. That's not great. And then Domantas Sabonis has 34 points. He has 12 rebounds. He has 5 assists. So your two stars combined for 77 points. Nobody else did anything. Like I don't want Harrison Barnes had 9 points. That's your next leading scorer. Malik Monk laid a huge egg, 1 of 7 from three. He has 7 points. Keegan Murray, 5 points. Kevin Herter, 5 points. It completely
Murray
disappeared.
also, by the way, I mean, it was just shooting struggles. I mean, Murray also
Yeah.
1 of 7 from beyond the arc. You just look at their totals going down the box score. It's like, I mean, you thought maybe it would be like that Clipper game in a way where you end up with 2 40-point games in Malik Monk and De'Aaron Fox last year. But you're
Hmm.
looking around through the whole roster and it's 2 of 11, 2 of 8, 3 of 11. I mean,
Yeah.
the guys that you're usually counting on for perimeter, shots is not there.
Yeah, here's a crazy stat. If you look at Harrison Barnes, Keegan Murray, Kevin Herter, and Malik Monk, your shooters, right? They go 3 of 20 from three. 3 of 20. So actually, it might be 3 of 22, 14, 19, 20, 3 of 22. You're not going to win any games like that. You're just not. And I think we saw some of the same issues that we had seen in the previous game and maybe some of the previous games where the Kings not only were they're getting beat in transition, but it's this weird transition where you're getting beat in transition, but not off of turnovers. You're not turning the ball over all that much, but you're giving up all these transition buckets. And it's laziness. It's not getting back. It's not doing your job. It's not doing the basics. And I think like we saw it in the Minnesota game. We saw it again in the Portland game. It's kind of a disturbing trend. The disappearance of three of your starters is not good. And then, if we fast forward, well, and then I'll be honest, man. I don't know who Dwap Reef is. Like I don't know who he is. I don't think you knew who he was before that game. Maybe you did, but
I learned about him a couple weeks ago when watching a Portland game, and there's not a whole lot of Duop Reef
yeah.
intel that we had. So no, it's
Yeah, for a
crazy.
random dude to come in and go full Jason Smith on you and drop 25 and 9. That's what this team has always done historically is some random dude. And you can go back all the way to like the opening days of the Sacramento Kings. Derek Smith went off for like 30 something as a member of the Clippers, and then the Kings went out and traded for him, and that was a huge mistake. He just had a one off against a bad defensive team, and it feels like history just keeps repeating itself. Um,
Yeah, I mean, I did, to my credit, I did know Jabari Walker. I mean, that's more of a little more of a at least a
yeah,
fan of Samaki Walker, his father, and some NBA lineage, and obviously a decent college player. But come on,
yeah,
Duop Reef wasn't something that was on the front of mind. He wasn't on the scouting report going into that game. Clearly,
he wasn't on anyone's bingo card. No,
no.
no, it was bizarre. So let's fast forward. You get to the Atlanta game, which happened yesterday on Friday. Recording this pod on Saturday. What are we? We're on the December 30th, so night before New Year's Eve, and the Kings come out again, and they're so flat. Like I don't even know what to say. They just look like they had nothing, and they go down by 23, like right off the bat and I don't know. They look so listless and so out of it, and I didn't even know what to make. I thought that they were going to start the road trip 0-3. I mean 0-2. But I thought what Mike Brown did is he right away was like, okay, I've had enough, and he pulled Kevin Herter and he pulled Harrison Barnes 5 minutes into the game. They didn't go back in the first half. Both of them started the second half, but then they were both yanked quickly in the third quarter. Kevin Herter hurt his. He has a hand injury. I think. I don't know. I didn't look at the injury report this
Strain.
afternoon.
Yeah.
Um,
He's questionable. He's questionable for Memphis tomorrow on the 31st with a hand strain in his left hand. And if you saw the replay, James, hand injuries are weird. Like, remember when Domas got his hand just touched the back of, I
oh
forget who it
yeah,
was, and when he hurt his stuff, you're like, how did that happen? It's not like he got his hand caught in the jersey. It was like, and I remember, I'm a fan of baseball as you are. If you've ever seen, Pablo Sandoval, or even, I think it was, I'm probably getting this wrong, so people in the comments can help me out later on, but I think it was Aaron Rowan who went to like take a swing of the bat, and all he did was go like this, and he just like drops the bat as if it electrocuted him, and he like tore
he,
something in his wrist or his hand. It's like it's very strange injury. But that's kind of like what Kevin looked like. He just had like a defensive kind of stance and kind of yanks his hand back a little bit, and as if he's like did some. I don't know what it is. They call it a strain. Hopefully, it's not too serious and he can get back out there. But yeah, pretty wild.
Either way, Kevin Herter is been in a spiral. I don't know how else to describe it. He finished that game with 7 points, 3 rebounds, 3 of 6 from the field, and he only played 9 minutes and 45 seconds. Again, it was due to injury, but he's now he's down to 10.4 points per game. His 3-point shooting's down to 35.2% from the field. Over his last his last 5 games, he's only had double figure scoring in one of those games,
Yeah,
but over his last, man, I want to say, what is this, a 10-game stretch? Uh, it's even worse than that. Over the last 11 games, Kevin Herter's averaging 6.4 points per game. He's shooting 36% from the field and 26.8% from three. And that's over 11 games. And, he's not giving you anything as an assist guy. He's not giving you anything on the glass, which is something at least he was doing early in the season where he started hitting the boards hard. And I think Mike Brown has responded relatively well, cutting him down to 19 minutes a game. And I think it's the issue that I'm sure Mike Brown has is Mike Brown looks at the advanced statistics and he realizes that it doesn't matter how bad Kevin Herter or Harrison Barnes are doing, his starting lineup is still like his best lineup that he can go to. They're like 11.1 points. They're a plus 11.1 in per 100 possessions as a starting group, as a 5-man unit. And so they're really good. And I think teams are still fearing Kevin Herter, and they're still fearing the fact that Harrison Barnes can shoot the three. But that won't last long if these guys are, hovering around 9, 10 points a game. And I don't know, is there anything you're seeing that just stands out, Sean, when it comes to these two, and why you think they might be struggling the way they are?
Well, I'm not so worried about Harrison Barnes as much as maybe Herter, because Herter is a guy you count on to be able to score and to be able to shoot from the perimeter. And there's a lot of games where we've seen him go through funks. We've seen him when he's really hot. He started off the season terribly. He knew it; it was affecting him. And then I felt like he made some major strides, and put some things together. And I thought, even in this stretch, the stuff at home, I can think of some big buckets that he came up with that certainly propelled them. And but when you look at it as overall collective thing, especially on the road, for some reason, he just hasn't been there. And even when he seemed a little bit more like himself, and you had mentioned some of the work he'd done on the rebounding front and kind of helping that pick up some of that a little bit, that was helpful. But it's gone the other way. And I think also, there are common threads and themes within these losses. I think the Kings are in a stretch now where they have to do some soul searching. I don't think it's no panic button at all, but it is some things where Mike Brown has to tinker a little bit. And as you mentioned, seeing his minutes come down a little bit, um, you know, Harrison is asked to do things that don't really show up on box scores quite often, and certainly I'd like to see him be able to take the place of guys. If a guy isn't hitting shots or isn't a scoring factor, him being able to step into that role. Well, oftentimes by the time you figure that out, the game is already kind of out of hand. It's really trying to find a way for this team to realize, hey, the three isn't falling. certainly you can take open shots from the perimeter, but find other ways to score, get into the paint because, man, I mean, I talked about it in podcast prior. This team has an ability to win games and find success when they're able to get into the paint. It's like I think they've only had one loss when they're able to get 50 points in the paint, if I remember correctly. I haven't seen the stat in a few days, but there's a decided advantage when the Kings are able to get inside and score. But when I was looking at this before they hit the holiday and went into Portland, I felt they closed in a pretty disappointing way. But again, you're losing to some really good teams. The Boston game is what it is. Minnesota is what it is. These are teams that give you length and physicality and stuff that you already know that you had. This dates back to last season. We know all that. Find a nice win against Phoenix. Phoenix is in a little bit of disarray, but then you're going in against some teams that just frankly aren't the elite, and maybe you're overlooking or just feeling like you can just walk in and take care of business, and you're finding sizable deficits that you have to build your way back from. And in the Atlanta game, like you mentioned, 23-point deficit, they're able to do it, and they're able to do it with some tinkering that Mike Brown did. I would imagine he felt like he had to do some tinkering coming into that game. But I'll say you this, James, like they had lost 3 of 4 going into the Atlanta game last night. And I'm out and about in these streets, as I like to say.
Yeah.
And I was watching it at an establishment that was in the Doco. And you wouldn't know it that this team had scuffled the way it has. I mean, granted, they win last night, they battle back. You're still 6 games over 500. I mean, this is a really good record but this team has some sizable flaws. But the fan support is still just incredible. I mean, I'm at an establishment where there's people dressed up in their jerseys and they've come out and made a point to really come out and support their team. And I was remarking to a couple friends of mine who are not Kings fans, and they're like, "Wow, really? This is just a game over the Hawks, and these guys are cheering like they just won the Super Bowl." I go, "Yeah, man, that's called fan passion. Like that's what they do."
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
said, I was like, you realize like this game's over. Look outside. That beam is going to be on in the rain, which looked really fucking cool, by the way. And they go out and they celebrated as if it was a playoff win. So I'm glad to say that even through the scuffles, I think there's some people who are a little bit level headed still out there and realize in the grand scheme of things, even with some sizable flaws that this roster has, that hopefully the front office and Mike Brown can figure out, that also this team is really good still. I mean, they're 6 games over 500. If you look at it in comparison to last year, you're right in a good stretch. But I don't know that there's, for the people who cover this and the up and down and the up and downs of the season, that there's a big belief that they'll be able to overcome some of these flaws and not allow these flaws to become just who they are. Because we already know they're a terrible defensive team. And when they're bad, they're really bad.
Yeah. I'm watching the same thing you are. It's crazy that, we talk about how they're in a rough stretch, right? And how they lost 3 out of 4, but they've won 7 out of their last 11. They're 7-4 over their last 11. So they are still winning. And it's the way that they lose that is always shocking. And it's only been, I think, twice this season. One was the Hawks game, and one was, I think, like one of the first games of the season where they came back from a big deficit. And that's it. Like everything else, they just kind of like, oh, okay, our defense isn't good enough tonight. We're just going to lose. I think Mike Brown did a couple of things in the Hawks game, which I think were really impactful. Number one, I want like Trey Lyles needs, his flowers. He had his best game of the season by a long shot, 19.6 rebounds. This team is he's an element that when he is playing well, the Kings are really tough to beat. And I don't know why that is, because he should just be like your everyday average backup power forward, but there's something about a trade day that impacts the team's ability to actually come away with a win. And so I would point that out. I'd also say that Mike Brown, instead of going to JaVale McGee, went to Alex Len, and Alex Len was tremendous. Like at the point when Alex came in the first time, Domas was running a negative 30 on the game. He was a minus 30. Him and Keegan Murray were both minus 30s. Alex Len came in and in like 5 minutes was a plus 17. And I would like to tell you that, plus minus is a horrible stat. But there are certain times
It
where you look
is.
at it
It
is,
is. It
It
is.
is, but there are
Alex Len
times.
wasn't going up against Clint Capella as much as
No,
Domas was.
of
So,
course not. But
and they didn't
but
have DeAndre Hunter, and there's some size,
no,
it's different. I get what you're saying, though. He was super impactful, though. He was very good.
but there are times where plus minus, and you're watching the game, it matches the eye test. And I thought that Alex Lim was tremendous. And so Alex Lim was good. And then the other guy is I didn't expect them to go to Davion Mitchell.
By the way, I just had to glance at it. Domas finished -4.
Yeah, he finished -4. That was
Yeah.
a crazy thing. He was really good in the second half. It was
Plus minus
again,
doesn't mean shit. I tell you
it's
all the time.
it's a weird anomaly, totally. But the other guy who and this is why I again plus minus you can throw out the window, and sometimes there are other stats you can just throw out the window. I thought that Davion Mitchell was incredible in that game. I thought he played really well defensively, and anything he did on the offensive end, he was aggressive and didn't hesitate. And I thought it was one of his best games. I think he earned a longer look. I was very surprised that he got a look because Keon Ellis against Trey Young to me made more sense just because of Ellis's ability to get through screens and the fact that he picks up full court, a lot of things.
He's got a
But
size advantage too.
yeah, and
I
I
mean,
thought
let's
that
not forget that. I think people don't realize that as much as it. I mean, Davion Mitchell being on the bench in place of Keon Ellis a lot of times has to do with size.
yeah,
A guy who's obviously Keon earned a spot, right? He came in. Mike Brown has talked about that, and we've detailed that here how he won his spot.
mhm.
But him playing well, being able to pick up the pace, hold his mud, and also have some decided size over Davion, who obviously is a much better defender. You're giving it the look it should get at that time because in addition to Davion not having the size, he also became a little bit of a dribble the ball into the ground, walk the ball up the court, not have the speed. And let's be honest, it's not like he's a sharpshooter. So we understood why things were happening, but also when Keon came in, he captured it, and the team hadn't lost. Remember, we were looking at
Yeah.
since he had been brought into the rotation and elevated in the rotation, they were like 6-1 or something like that at one point.
It's that
Um,
6-game winning streak. He came in
yeah,
late in the Houston game. He played well. I think he has kind of he's kind of declined slightly. I
he
think
has.
people I don't know that they're scouting him, but they're at least talking about him when they're preparing for a game and the energy that he brings. And I don't think that he's just flat out he's lost his job and it's going to Davion now. We're only going to see Davion. But I also know that Davion did exactly what we've been waiting for. He was impactful in a different way, and that's something that again we've been waiting for it, right? Like come in the game and look like you belong with the team that you're playing for. So many times this year, he's a square peg in a round hole. And I feel for him because I don't think he's a bad NBA player. I just think he's on the wrong team. And sure, the Kings need a defensive minded guy, but the things that he can't bring and the way that he plays, the style of basketball he wants to play, it's just not Sacramento Kings basketball. And it's unfortunate, but again, in this game I thought he was really good and it really didn't show up in the box score. He had a relatively quiet box score, but again, sometimes it just means so much more how a player is on the court than any box score can tell you. Yeah, he finishes with 2 points, with 2 assists. He doesn't have a steal. He has 2 personal fouls and a -1 in 13 minutes, but a -1 when the game was completely out of hand at one point, and I thought he came in and helped stabilize.
And not
So,
only that, but let's for a team that's been just absolutely terrible defensively, and
mhm.
he had him. I'd say Malik Monk. I think Chris Duarte. You mentioned obviously what Trey Lyles was doing off the bench and from a scoring standpoint, but these guys came in and they collectively as a group, the whole team, they held the Hawks to just 39 points in that second half.
Yeah, they gave
That's
up
the
36 in the first quarter, 35 in the second quarter, 39 in the second half.
Yeah, and that dates back to last season. Best defensive. I mean, Mike Brown even made a comment after the game. He's like, "I don't think that's happened since I've been here." It's like, well, no, it happened once, but to that point, it just never happens. Like a defensive effort like that from Sacramento never happens, and I think Davion is a big reason why. Um, I do push back a little bit on Davion as a part of Kings basketball. If he can keep his foot on the gas and lead the charge, keep going back to the preseason. I remember looking at what Davion did last year, and it didn't take away from the identity of this team playing fast when he was on the court. Preseason, he's pushing the pace. I thought he was pushing the pace even more so than what I had seen in the previous season. But then for whatever reason, you get into the season and it's just like they're playing in mud. What are they doing? Why are they walking the ball up the court?
But yeah, remember the 5 games that De'Aaron Fox missed, they
Right.
were like a 102 pace before he got hurt, and they dropped to like a 93 pace over the 5 games. He just wasn't able to push the tempo. He wasn't able to play the style of basketball the Kings were trying to play.
Right.
So, let's get to the bigger discussion here with both Harrison Barnes and Kevin Huerter. We saw Mike Brown go to Chris Duarte early, and then played Duarte a lot. I think he ended up with 26 minutes. Duarte has settled down. He's not fouling everybody every single time he steps on the court, which is a good thing. That way, I mean, he was unplayable early in the season because of that. Yeah.
Completely agree. Yeah.
And so now I still don't think he's like in the flow, but his aggressiveness and his defensive pressure, to me, it does stand out. You can see it right away. And it also stood out that, Atlanta has 2 kind of smaller guards. Trae Young, of course, is tiny, but DeJounte Murray is also like, he might weigh like 170 pounds, right?
Yeah.
He's 6'5", but he's a really skinny 6'5". I thought that Kevin Huerter had no answer for the small guards, and it was like, ooh, they're just picking on him every single play. And I think Duarte did a much better job, and I think Duarte is quietly earning minutes. Maybe he's back in the rotation, especially he'll probably start if Kevin Huerter misses any time. But the 11-game stretch here that Kevin Huerter has had, it really does kind of make you wonder, like, what exactly are the Kings going to do? They're not going to stand pat. I'm already hearing some murmurs of that he might be part of like conversations and stuff like that. But I don't know what exactly you're going to get from a guy who just is struggling so badly. And I still think Kevin Huerter is a good basketball player. I just think for whatever reason, he's got a little bit of a hitch in his 3-point shot for sure. And then on top of that, he just hasn't found his way in this season like he did last year, where he was the Kings' 3rd leading scorer and averaged over 15 a game.
Yeah, I mean, he's still a lot of season left. Think that he can, one game. I know he's on a stretch here, but like talking about Duarte, like I don't think that Duarte comes in and all of a sudden gets, the keys back again. I think, realizing that it's a 1-game thing, certainly you like the effort, but is there the trust? Can you get past what he's been doing with fouling to start the season? Him having to maximize his ability when he's on the floor and maximize those minutes, I think is an adjustment. I think before he was in a situation where he knew he'd get 20, 25 minutes a game in an Indiana Pacers season coming out of his rookie year, knowing he's going to be able to play, and then it dwindles down, and now you have to make the most out of possibility of playing anywhere from 9 to 15 minutes. And that I think can be not only a tough thing for a lot of players, but tough thing for people who are typically playing 20, 25 minutes. So fun to see him come in and be able to react the way he does. I agree with you. I think he's the number 1 guy to fill in for Huerter if Huerter misses the game against Memphis. But look, whether Huerter, this league is having a conversation about everybody. Trade deadline is right around the corner. It's not far away. I think you have a good idea of what teams are right now, but I still feel like there's a lot of Jekyll and Hyde in the NBA night in, night out. Like there's a handful of teams that are showing to be really, really good. I think a week ago, maybe 2 weeks ago, teams like the T-Wolves, who are number 1 in the West, there was still probably some doubt as to whether or not they could continue this hot streak and continue to show that they're one of the elite teams in the league. I don't think they're going anywhere, James. And there's all of a sudden the Lakers, who look really, really good in the in-season tournament, have had struggles outside of that. You see what the Warriors are doing. Draymond Green could be back. Who knows? Another week, maybe 2 weeks, maybe a month. I mean, not a lot of conversations coming out of there, but they tend to scuffle a little bit after they get out to a really nice start after the initial games that Draymond's out, and then all of a sudden you've got scuffles going on with the Warriors. So the Suns
I
still
don't even
haven't
know
figured
if it
things.
matters. I don't even know if it
Right.
matters if Draymond Green comes back, like whether
It
they're a
may,
better team at this point.
right. It may not. I mean, they've shown the ability to win without him in this small stretch, small sample size. But then again, some of the woes are coming back again, and they're having some issues. Phoenix, I still think, is a very crazy build of. I mean, they have no bench. They still haven't
Yeah.
had Bradley Beal. Had what one game with all three of them. So it's just a lot of Jekyll and Hyde, especially in the West right now. And I think that you can group the Kings right into that by virtue of the way they look when things aren't going well. And they obviously have a lot of problems to address. I don't think personally that Kevin Herter is one of them, but certainly if you're making moves, you got to give something to get something. And I think a lot of times fans and media are guilty of this. Is they'll try to find, okay, well, what let's take Davion Mitchell, who isn't in the rotation. Let's
Yep.
take Kevin Hurt or Harrison Barnes, who in most people's minds has been a non-factor this season. And then let's take Kevin Herter or something like that, who is struggling, and then all of a sudden turn that into some diamond that just comes over to the Kings way. You know, like realistically, you're not putting together a bag of shit and getting a diamond. So thus why you look at OG Anunoby, not necessarily saying that the Raptors got a diamond in return, but they do have a player who's under contract who scores at a pretty high rate in RJ Barrett. You've got another primary ball handler in Emmanuel Quickly, and the Knicks are going all in on saying we don't really have a guarantee, but here is a player that we now get the first chance at signing and hopefully see how he meshes with our two stars in Jalen Brunson and Julius Randle.
Yeah, so I think that that's where we take this discussion is that the NBA world, like, I mean, I think it was put on notice today with the trade of OG Anunoby because it basically it kicks off the trade season, which I didn't think would happen this early, but it's clearly it's here. Trade season's here, and it sure does look like the Toronto Raptors are open for business. And I think a lot of Kings fans, like as soon as OG Anunoby gets traded, your first reaction is, "Oh, why couldn't it have been the Kings?" Right? And that's it's a perfectly fine question because the Kings clearly have been interested in OG Anunoby in the past. There is no hiding from that. There has been interest between those, well, at least on the Kings side, for bringing OG Anunoby in. But when you see that the way that the deal is crafted for in the deal with the Knicks, where again they give up quickly and they give it RJ Barrett and only a second round pick, and they also took back what was it, Precious Achua and
Malachi Flynn.
oh yeah, Malachi Flynn. Anyway, the way that that trade works, like the Kings don't have that. They don't have that to offer. So when you hear this thing where again the Kings are not going to put Keegan Murray in a trade, and whether that's true on this February 7th or 8th or not, but when you hear that now, like we just saw the trade that would have happened if the Kings were going to put Keegan Murray in the trade. You would have been able to get OG Anunoby most likely in a trade if that's what you wanted to do, and if you wanted to put Keegan Murray in it, and the Kings don't want to. So the thing is that after you get past that, the Kings don't have that trade to offer to Toronto. Now, Toronto is a very specific case, right? They want to get young, but they don't want to get so young that they're starting over. They've got Scotty Barnes. They're looking for 22, 23-year-olds to fit with Scotty Barnes. So that trade makes perfect sense to me. And the Kings don't have that trade. The only thing the Kings could have offered was either Harrison Barnes or Kevin Herter, and then like a couple of first round picks. And if that's not where Toronto's going, and especially the first round picks can't be until like 2026, 2028, then you're not going to get that deal, right? That deal, it's going to go to the Knicks. They've got a better offer. But every team that around the league is in a different position. And so I wouldn't think like just because the Kings couldn't get OG Anunoby in this trade, that doesn't mean that they won't be part of another trade because there's always teams that are looking to shed
Right.
salary or move off of a veteran or do. I mean, again, people need to remember Harrison Barnes came to the Kings basically for free. It was Justin Jackson and the expiring contract of Zach Randolph, who the Kings had literally told, don't even show up. You don't need to come to the facility or anything else the whole season. And so you were able to get like at that point, like a 26, 27-year-old Harrison Barnes for basically free. I don't know if that trade's going to come up again, but I certainly think that the Kings are going to be aggressive and they are going to try to get one of these deals done. It's just this wasn't the deal that was going to happen. But Sean, it brings me to the bigger question now is, do you think that because that deal didn't happen, but the way that the trade was structured, do you think it's more likely that Pascal Siakam gets traded? And do you think the Kings have an opportunity to get in on that trade? Because even though it's the same team, they already like got two young pieces to go with their young player, and they might look to do something different there. They might not be looking for the same package for Pascal Siakam that they were for OG Anunoby.
Well, yeah, I mean, they in RJ Barrett, they got a primary scoring option who's under team control for some time. You know, he's
Mm-hmm.
not approaching free agency like Ananobi and like pressure, or excuse me, like Pascal Siakam is. So if Toronto feels like they have to get something for him, yes. But if you're asking me, does Masai Ujiri and the Raptors think that at this point bringing in RJ Barrett, does that change the calculus? And they say, okay, do we try to keep Pascal Siakam? If I'm them, I probably would. I know that the age isn't completely lined up; they're a little bit younger now, but he's still a hell of a player, and he's a hell of a player that people want, including the Kings if they're smart. So if there's a package that can be made, sure, but I wouldn't necessarily rule out the possibility of the Raptors necessarily trying to play ball with Siakam and keep him in a Raptors uniform at this point.
Yeah,
It's a tough part though, him heading into free agency.
there's a rumor out there that I've read, and I think it's a pretty well sourced rumor that the Raptors and Siakam had set December 30th, with today, as the day that they were either going to do an extension or that they weren't going to have extension talks anymore, and then whatever happens in free agency happens. That deadline is literally coming and going like as we're talking on this podcast. Now, whether that's 100%, who knows? Like if Toronto comes back to him and says, "Hey, look, let's get a deal done," um, then maybe it does happen that way. But I also like he's 29, and uh, he'll I think he turns 30 before next season. Like this is a guy that really doesn't fit the time arc of the team we're talking about. If you're looking at RJ Barrett at 23 and Scotty Barnes is what, 22, and Emmanuel Quickly is 24. So and the other thing with when it comes to Siakam is that he makes 38 million bucks. And so in order to make a trade with a team like Toronto, you got to pile in a bunch of contracts, and they're going to have to take veterans. There aren't young players that make 20 something $1 million that you can take in a trade for Pascal Siakam that a team is going to be willing to put out there. So I would assume that like any trade that does happen with him is it's gonna have players like a Harrison Barnes. It's gonna have players like a Kevin Herter. And I don't know, it might come down to draft capital, or maybe do you have a young player that they like or not? But I'm going to say that I think the Kings are probably still intrigued by what's happening there, and probably still on the phone and seeing if Siakam is going to become available, especially with their need for more rebounding, their need for maybe even another primary scorer, a guy who can be a number two scorer for you until
Absolutely.
and Sean, I think what it would do, it buy you a year or two to allow Keegan Murray to become the player he's going to be and not worry about it right now. We're so high on Keegan Murray there because he busts out with 47 points and then 25 points. Well, Keegan Murray's had a couple of stinkers in a row, and that's just being a young player. Like
It's just basketball. Yeah, it's
it is,
basketball. Yeah.
right? He's just a second year player and he's got 110 games under his belt or something, and he's going to have some ups and downs. Getting a player, if you were somehow able to do it like OG Anunoby, would really help balance. I mean, like Pascal Siakam would really help you balance out what you're doing going forward, I think. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it wouldn't work. Maybe you can't get him, but I still think the Kings are going to be, they're going to at least call. And I know that they've already had discussions in the past, so I would assume that they're going to have more discussions when it comes to Pascal Siakam.
Well, not to use a draft day reference from the movie Draft Day, but the conversations as they evolve, I mean, so does the league. I mean, and OG Anunoby's on a different team now, so
Mm-hmm.
just the asking price of Pascal Siakam increase, decrease, things like that. Like there's the whole world, the landscape is different days later. And as you go into 2024, you get to mid January, you get to end of January, things are a little bit different then too. So, yeah, you got about a month, and I kind of expect some more moves to be maybe not from a King standpoint, but I think that this is going to be a fairly busy trade deadline. And I think a lot of things will happen before the deadline. As you get closer for sure. But I think you're going to see a little bit of activity and some player movement before that gets to the hardcore deadline.
Yeah, I think so too. I think this was just like the beginning of what we're going to see. And I think it's going to be a wild 6 weeks, 5 weeks moving forward. And I think in Sacramento too, because like, look, the Kings know where they are. Like, I don't think there's anyone within the walls there that are questioning, whether this team needs to add or not. Like
Oh, they
you're
know.
seeing, yeah,
They
you're
know.
seeing the inconsistency of this team. You're seeing that, they're really good, but can they hit the great mark? And that's difficult. Like it doesn't matter how much Mike Brown wants to coach his team to play defense, they still don't do it on a
Right.
nightly basis. Sure they can do it in the second half, but you can get praised for scoring 30 for holding a team to 39 in the second half, but when you gave up 70 or real close to it in the first half, like okay, that's not great. They've got a lot of work to do, and they probably need different players than what they have on their roster right now. And I think I was on the OG Anunoby camp, and I think I shifted off of the OG Anunoby camp to the Pascal Siakam camp, like maybe was it 2 weeks ago, and then I was kind of teetering again once Keegan Murray had this blow up stretch. And now I'm like, no, the Kings would be better if they had a second, if their number 2 scorer was Pascal Siakam and their number 3 scorer was Keegan Murray and their number 4 scorer was Domantas Sabonis running everything through his stuff. So who knows
Well,
if that can happen?
let's also not take away. I mean, Pascal Siakam's a decent defender. He's not a great defender like Anunoby
Yeah.
is. I mean, Anunoby's an elite defender. Pascal Siakam is a very active player, and he's a long player, and he's got tremendous size at the wing position. That's what they need. It's exactly what they need. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, you don't have, but and again, Anunoby might be a solid scorer. He might become what Siakam has been, which is a 20+ point scorer in the league. That's fine. But the one thing is Pascal Siakam will help you everywhere. He's already in the prime of his career.
Oh yeah. Well, not only that, but Sean, if you were able to add a guy who, for his career is around 7.5 rebounds per game instead of, what you have right now, that would be tremendous. Like if you have 2 forwards that can get you 14 rebounds a game or 13 rebounds a game, as opposed to right now, what you're getting is around 8. That's a substantial difference, and it would take a lot of pressure off Domantas Sabonis. Also, having another primary scorer, having a guy that walks in and can get you 20 on not any night, but every night. Uh, just look at what the pressure it would take off of Sabonis and allow him to do what he does, but without having all of these bodies around him, because you have to defend that guy at all times. Like Siakam is a dangerous, dangerous player. So the rebounding's there, the scoring is there, and then oh by the way, the last 3 seasons is like 5.4 assists, 5.8 assists, and 5.2 assists. When Sabonis steps off the court, you can have him become your primary hub that you run the ball through, and he can create for you without it just being on Malik Monk. And I just think that there's a lot of avenues where you could be really good with a player like that. And if you want to be a team that talks about having championship, ideas, you got to go out and get a player like this. This is what you have to do if you want to be that team. So yeah, I'd put him on a short list of players that the Kings are and will be interested in here in the next coming weeks.
Yeah, with respect to what Mike Brown talks about, how hard it is from going to good to great, he's not wrong. But this is how you go from good to great. That's how you do it without blowing up what you are and having your team make these drastic strides on the defensive end. It's like, well, get them. You have to get them personnel, because through a season and a half, really more like 2.5 seasons, you already know you haven't been a good defensive team, and you tried to add some pieces that can help that, but that helps you go from good to great, in my
No,
opinion.
I totally agree. Yeah, and this team has the potential. It's there, but I think they are one move away from, at least from being like that team. And it's something too that I like people forget. The Kings traded like in what 2001. They traded Jason Williams for Mike Bibby. Like trades happen. You know what I mean? Like,
What, what do you mean? Yes, trades happen.
well, no, but the team that got you to the playoffs this last year, that rarely is that the team that gets you over the hump.
Right.
Rarely is that the team that you like finish with. It's not the finished product.
No.
And sometimes you gotta rip off the Band-Aid and make some hard decisions on players who, have played really well for you in the past in order to take that next step. And sometimes you gotta take some risks. And I
Yeah, I mean,
definitely.
you don't have to go that far back. Tyrese Halliburton for Domas Sabonis,
Oh
and
yeah.
that was your franchise altering move that completely shifted course. It's like, you are no longer this team, you are this team, and you became a good team, and you're reaping the benefits of that, and you have to build around that. And now you're at another crossroads again, coming up at the trade deadline, where you've already hitched your wagon to Domas and Fox. You've got players that are aligned with them, both in age and contracts, and you have a nice budding player. I don't want to call him a star, but you have a nice budding talent in Keegan Murray, who can, be everything you want him to be. How do you build around that? How do you make that around? And making moves like, Pascal Siakam, or other players like that, you have to bring in those types of players. And each time you do it, there's no guarantee it works, but each time you do it, it is a risk.
That's true. All right, Sean, let's get to the business of basketball. Um, like we always talk about needs, and we always talk like what do the Kings need and all that stuff. I'm going to ask you the reverse. Is there a player or a type of player out there that you look at that you're like, I really hope the Kings avoid this?
Mm. Yeah, well, I'd say, what comes to mind when I think of a player I don't want to see on the Sacramento Kings is a player who's just a chucker, a guy who comes in and just throws up, 20 plus shots a game. Like, look, this is an equal opportunity offense, and you're gonna get shots, you're gonna get scoring opportunity. But having a absolute James Harden type player. Now, granted, he's a playmaker as well, so I don't want to, take away that type of player, but somebody who obviously gets a lot of shots up, gets to the free throw line, can be considered a little bit of a ball hog at times, is not really what they need. That being said, Siakam can get some shots up, so I don't want to contradict myself. I want to obviously show that, but you need a player that's not one dimensional. And if scoring is the only thing that they do, you got plenty of scoring throughout your roster. That should not be what you're shopping for. You should be shopping for wins and things to improve what you already do, and make things better, and just upgrade. So yeah, I don't particularly look at somebody who can just be an Allen Iverson type player who just throws up 30 shots a game to get 30 points. I don't like that.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, Pascal Siakam on the season is averaging 16 field goal attempts per game, but he's shooting 50.9% from the field. He's down. His
He's
3-point numbers are like
really down,
24.8.
really
Yeah,
down from the perimeter.
but I really expect, like, if you were to put him in a system like the Kings, where he doesn't have to be the primary all the time,
And the ball
there
moves.
yeah, there's gonna be a lot of times where he would actually just be a catch and shoot guy, and
Yep.
I think he can up his all of his numbers across the board. I think right now, the fact that they're losing, the fact that, like, it's a bit of a panic there, and they have a new coaching staff and everything else, I just kinda feel like he probably is doing too much in his current role, and I think if he had less, he would probably be better. Um, yeah, so I would agree with you, Sean. I would say the player that you described is exactly what I hope the Kings avoid, and I hope that they don't make a move just to make a move. This team needs to make a move because they need to get better, right?
Right.
And I think I don't even know how this would work because it's so extreme, the salary. But making a move to make a move and choosing the wrong player, for me, it's Zach LaVine. And
Right.
yeah, and so and I know that Zach LaVine would like to play for the Sacramento Kings. There's no question about that. I've heard that on from multiple sources that he would love to play here and not just like reading stuff on the internet. But I also think that there are people within the walls of the Kings franchise that would like him to play for the Kings, that
Yes,
like what he brings,
that is true.
and I just think that that's a horrible mistake.
Yeah,
And
it's
that's
not.
just my
It's
opinion, but you know, I don't want to pay $200 million for a guy who doesn't play defense and who is one dimensional.
yeah. I'm with you. It's not. I don't see how you. I'm trying to find a funny analogy, but I don't see how you go and become this. Like, I just don't see how you become better. Like, how did you shop for wins by adding more scoring? To and again, it depends on who's going out the door, but that doesn't seem like the if you're keeping your core intact, it doesn't seem like what you need.
It's the type of scoring, Sean.
Right.
I think that's the problem. I think we can all see where, like, it doesn't matter how we turn it. Like Tyrese Halliburton and De'Aaron Fox in their short time together, they weren't working together. And we're seeing what Fox looks like without Halliburton. We're seeing what Halliburton looks like without Fox. Like, both players are finding massive amounts of success without each other. I don't think adding a player like that in the backcourt would make any sense at all. And again, I just don't think that there's like, that to me would be like an egregious error, and I don't think that that's something that Monty McNair would do. But then again,
Unless it's part of like I can if you're making several moves at the deadline and your team is all of a sudden going to look dramatically different. Let's say for example Kevin Herter's off the team and you have Zach LaVine in place, but then you go and find that wing player elsewhere, whether it's you know I don't see a team being able to bring it. I don't see the Kings being able to bring in Siakam and Levine together, but something like that. If you're able to, you're upgrading another role in the opinion of many of saying, okay, Zach LaVine over Kevin Herter, and then you're still adding to a wing position or at least a more suitable four, so that Keegan is more of a three. And I don't necessarily love that, but at least it kind of makes some sense and maybe. But then you have my attention. But as currently constructed with the core that you have, I just don't see how that works.
that would be an $80 million addition,
Yeah,
80 million per season addition. There's no way to do that
wel-
without either
welcome
Demonis
to
Sabonis or
luxury
De'Aaron
tax.
Fox being involved. There's just
Sure,
not.
you make
Yeah.
you know what you do is you pay a lot in luxury tax, and I
Well,
just
yeah,
don't
but
think that's
like, just the dynamics of trades,
right.
there's no way to do it. There's no
No,
way to do it. Yeah. So, I mean, you would literally have to trade every single player not named De'Aaron Fox or Demonis Sabonis. I mean, we're talking Keegan, we're talking to everybody. And even still, Malik Monk would have to go. And I don't even think you could still come up with the sheer dollar amount, because you got to be within.
well, and take Siakam off of there. Like if you're saying Levine, and let's say it's a Keldon Johnson, there's
Oh yeah.
a whatever three out there. Like you end up with some sort of other player that can take the place of the Siakam role. Then sure. Like if there's a diagram out there that where you're adding 2 or 3 pieces to your team and you're upgrading almost every position, then I'm all in. Then I'd be all in for a Zach LaVine addition. What I'm
Hmm.
saying is Zach LaVine is currently constructed. And let's say it's the one upgrade you're making to your roster at the trade deadline. Well, then it doesn't really make all that much sense. But
Yeah.
if your team is looking dramatically different come trade deadline, and Zach LaVine is a part of it, well, then you have my attention.
Yeah. I mean, I'm with you. Like, I would just kind of like put it this way. If you're going to go out and get Levine, then you better also find a way to go get Matisse Thybulle um, and a guy like, I don't know, like you'd have to have 2 other defenders that you're going to get in addition to that. And just guys that straight up just play defense.
And
And
and maybe that's the challenge. Maybe that's the path that they're looking at.
I think we say no.
Yeah, I mean, again, it just depends on what those pieces are, right? Like you don't
Stauskas or Peyton, we say no,
know
neither,
to neither.
neither. Sweet. Okay, Sean, before we
I
get to
mean,
final
like
thoughts.
think about it. I mean, there's another name that's been surfacing. I think this week
Oh,
since our last podcast, and it's a Warrior, Andrew Wiggins.
oh. Would you take Wiggins?
I
Would you
like
do a
Wiggins.
straight up swap of Wiggins for Barnes?
Probably,
Probably. All right.
but I
Hmm.
don't know that that's the. I don't know that that's what it would center on, but it would be interesting.
I will tell you, while we're recording this podcast, one of the greatest games I've seen
Yeah,
is
I
happening.
keep, I keep
The
looking up. Go
the
ahead. Go ahead.
football game is absolutely nuts. The Detroit Lions just went for 2, down 1 with 23 seconds left. They marched all the way down the field and scored a touchdown. They went for 2 and just took a 21-20 lead over the Dallas Cowboys with 23 seconds left, which is actually a big deal for the San Francisco 49ers. If the Cowboys would have beat the Lions, it would have made their path to get into the playoffs much easier. I mean, to have
Yeah,
the number 1 seed a lot easier. Um,
correct.
they still can be the number 1 seed by winning out the next 2 games, but yeah, absolutely, absolutely wild, wild football game. And
And
Sean,
also,
go ahead.
well, I was going to say, because I kept getting distracted by the Warriors falling to the Mavs, but also the Pistons being, able to snap the 28 game losing streak
Good
and
for them,
beat
man.
the Raptors, who were down 3 players. They beat them by 2, so the streak comes to an end. And it was funny because I had just made a note of this, and I got to find it. But to see that to see that the Pistons win means they fall 1 game shy of the American Canadian four. What was it? The 4 major American Canadian leagues, and they fall one shy of the record, one loss shy of the record, and it was Chicago Cardinals during World War II.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah,
Hey, Sean, they have now
yeah,
taken the 2 points off the
they did.
board.
It's off the way back to the football game.
It was a tackle eligible touchdown, and they're going to go for it again from the 7-yard line, risk their entire oh my gosh, this is absolutely
Well,
wild what is happening. We
you have
can
to
pause.
explain it's Jared Goff and the Lions who have the ball, and they're going
Yes.
for it.
The Lions are they Jared Goff steps back
Like, you're on a
and
little
it's
bit of a delay.
intercepted.
Yeah,
It's
he
intercepted.
got he got leveled, and there's a flag on the play. So good luck. This
Now
could
there's
be
going to be another flag, and it's clearly going to likely be holding on the defense. I don't know why they don't just kick the extra point. Oh yeah, that's
offsides on Micah Parsons.
we're gonna do this all over again.
Oh,
Okay, this is
what a
why.
cutaway to CD Lamb, who's hanging his head.
And you know what, Sean? The beauty of this whole thing, I have CD Lamb in my fantasy football
Your price picks?
Super
Oh,
Bowl
your
this
Super Bowl.
week. He has 28.7 points. He's gone for like well over 200 yards receiving. I might actually get more yards here if they score this because it would actually give him an opportunity to get the ball back. This is absolutely bonkers. I
Oh,
can't believe.
don't look.
Oh, The Lions do not get the 2-point conversion. A huge victory for the San Francisco 49ers, although they will kick an onside kick, and who
Right.
knows?
There's still
Maybe at
23
that point.
seconds left. So.
Yeah, this is wild. Absolutely wild. We've been sidetracked here. We've been bamboozled. Sean, let's just hit this really quick before we get to final thoughts. Do you have any New Year's resolutions? Are you a New Year's resolution guy?
No, I'm not. I'm not a New Year's. I'm the guy that hopes everybody prospers and finds health and happiness and has a great time. I think the only resolution I would make is that I'd like to attend more concerts this year. I didn't do people think I go to a lot of concerts as is, but didn't do as much as I had hoped this past year. So probably will do a little bit more in that regard. So that's my hope.
Okay.
James is glued to the football game.
No, I'm all right. See, New Year's resolution, I need to do a better job of maintaining my back throughout the year. We started. I will tell you working Wednesday, Thursday, Friday for 4 hours straight in a chair. Like the recovery for me is crazy, and it's not good. So
do you have one of those standing? You get the standing things. I mean, workplaces provide those.
Actually, I think I can stand up while we do it, but when your back gets to a point like mine is, my core is so bad because I can't. If I'm walking, I'm fine. If I'm just standing, I'm in as much or more pain than I am if I'm sitting. So the best thing I can do is lay down, like even at like a 0G, like that's the best thing I can do. Yeah.
Just get you an inversion table where you're just hanging upside down and you're just doing
I have one.
doing the show. Yeah. Just strap that in. You hang upside down, you decompress all that, maybe just for an hour of the show, and that will solve probably not all the ailments because your back is jacked.
Yeah.
So I mean, only God and modern surgery could probably fix that. So
and who knows if that would even who knows so
and even then.
Yeah. All right. Do we have any final thoughts, Sean?
Well, yeah, the Cowboys are going to win, so they just collected the onside kick. So that's we can lay that to rest for the people hanging on this game.
For and good people out there.
Yeah. Final thoughts. Happy New Year's, everyone. Be safe and sane. And I don't know how people will be celebrating, but I'm going to imbibe and do so responsibly and be around a lot of friends. So looking forward to it. I'm also looking forward to a few days off, which is great. Even around the holidays, this past week was good. I was able to kind of take a few days off, and it's great. And then looking at the Niners schedule, it's going to be a fun one. I mean, this thing's going to get going. Playoffs right around the corner, so be busy with that. But yeah, man, just hoping everybody out there had a great Christmas and wonderful New Year's, and happy to keep this thing going into the fun part of the season. So
yeah, me too. Okay, so James's final thoughts. Number one, go team, rolling with my homies. It's my fantasy team. Me and my son share. We're going for our third championship in like 6 years.
It didn't look like you were going to make the championship team the way you were talking about your
early on. Yeah,
so good luck.
I think we were 4-5 and haven't lost since. Yeah, so we've been on a roll. It's been a good stretch, and that's something that I will tell you. Like, if you're out there and you're a fantasy football player, and like for me, I've played forever. Like, I think this is my 34th season playing fantasy football. I added my son to the mix. Like, it was the first year that Patrick Mahomes was a starter for the Chiefs, and that's been the best thing ever. It's so much fun playing with him, and we get in like little skirmishes about who and what we're gonna do, and I make draft mistakes, he make draft mistakes, but I think like having another generation, it's made me like really, really enjoy it and have a good time with it. So outside of that, be safe, have a great new year. We'll be back early next week. Hopefully.
Can I say one more thing?
Yep.
One more thing. Is because we talk a lot of movies on here, and saw the movie Poor Things, which is
Oh, I want to see it.
yeah. Well, I'm glad you do, because I don't know if it was good. I don't know if I loved it, but I have not been able to stop thinking about it. It is a wild movie. Anyone who says it's the female Frankenstein, it isn't doing the movie justice. It is a trip, and I would like to. I've read a lot of things about it. There's people who either love it or hate it, and I want to see where maybe some of our commenters, if they've seen it, hopefully they can comment in the YouTube section, because I honestly don't know what I thought of it. I kind of want to see it again. It is a wild ride. No matter what you think of the movie, I think she is absolutely fantastic. So
Crazy.
that's my review of Poor Things. I don't know what to make of it.
You don't know what to make of it. Okay.
Wow.
I will probably go see it. It's on my list because it's just something that really, really is intriguing. I don't know who's the director who's
Yorgos
created.
I'm gonna get his name. It's like Lanthimos. Something. He did The Favorite, which I really liked with Emma Stone, and really solid movie. If you haven't seen that one, I think it's like Rachel Weisz and Olivia Colman. It's very much a like king and queen kind of a ordeal. So that movie is a trip. I really enjoyed that one, but yeah, this one. He's it's like Willem Dafoe is in it, Mark Ruffalo is in it, Jared Carmichael's in it. Just a wild ride, man.
I like Willem Dafoe.
Yeah.
Yeah, great actor. Okay, I think that's going to do it for this edition of the KINGSBEAT podcast. Make sure if you're still watching here us on YouTube, give us a thumbs up if you don't mind. Give us a rating and review wherever you listen to your podcasts. That would be great. Jump on board with the KINGSBEAT. Go to thekingsbeat.com and become a premium subscriber to get invitations to everything that we do here. Brendan will be back this week, just a weekend away, which is great for Brendan. And Sean and I are both probably going to tie one on tomorrow. Good for us.
Where are you going?
After the game. I think we're just going down the street to some friend's house.
Good for you.
So we don't have to go anywhere far, and then we can get home, and like it should be an easy night. I don't know. I've got a lot of whiskey here. I might just stay here and have a good night here at the house. Sean?
One of my birthday gifts was the LeBron James tequila, which I have not tried yet. I don't remember the name of it offhand, but I was gifted that, and I'm hearing great things. So
okay,
I'd like to get to it.
I know Charlie from ESPN 1320 got all of us a bottle of Rittenhouse, I think, which is 100 proof whiskey.
That'll get the job done.
Yeah, I can also like blow flames into the air. Just it's a little crazy. But yeah, I don't know. We'll see. Should be a good couple of days here. The Kings do face the Memphis Grizzlies.
Ja Morant back.
Ja Morant is back.
Playing kind of well. Yeah.
Well, they went on a run, but then he sat a game and they lost. I don't know if they've lost with him yet. But he can't miss too many more games, Sean, or they're gonna be eliminated from the playoffs already.
Did you see that their goal, which was I think a really solid goal to have, they just want to return to 500, and if you can do that, that's huge.
Yeah, I mean that would be pretty amazing. But it's not like they're that far. They're 10-21,
right?
And they've lost 2 in a row. And so, yeah, it's a lofty goal, but I mean, the Kings need to go out there.
That's an attainable goal.
They need to figure out how to punch somebody in the face and
do it first.
And do it first and win a ball game. So,
yeah.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for this edition of the KIngsBEAT podcast, brought to you by Prize Picks. Jump on board with Prize Picks. All the information's down below. KIngsBEAT, I believe, is the password. Once you click on the link, and they'll match if it's your first time on Prize Picks, I think up to $100. So do that. Also, we're a Blue Wire podcast, so help support the good people of Blue Wire. Thanks for tuning in. So for Box 40, Sean Cunningham, I am James Hammond, Kings Insider for ESPN 1320 and the KIngsBEAT. We'll see you next week.